So when dog guardians are teaching their dogs to sit, they often do this technique called luring, where they put the treat up to the dog's nose and then they push the butt back, right? And they're like, oh my God, look, the dog did it, it's magic. You do not want to do this. If your dog will only sit for treats in your hand, then it's probably because that when you started teaching sit, you were using the treats incorrectly. So in this video, I'm gonna show you how to get rid of the treats, how to stop the lure, and what you should be doing instead. Let's go. So this is Kuba and her mom, Kayla, and Kuba actually knows the word sit, and she was taught using a lure. And so what ended up happening though is that now when they want their dog to do the sit without the lure, without the treat up to the nose, Kuba doesn't do it.
Does she know just the verbal without the lure?
I would say no. I've always had a treat and like kind of lure her with like putting it over her nose and stuff. She kind of responds like to my clenched fist, but I think it's because she thinks there's a treat in there. But I always just go and pet her afterwards. Like I'm just like, oh, no treat. Here's a pet.
Yeah.
So when we're working with dogs that have learned the sit behavior, but they learned it with that lure, they often have learned the sound of the cue. They've learned the word sit, but their interpretation, their definition of what that cue means is that they are supposed to look for the treat and expect the treat to push them back into that position. And so that's one of the reasons why as soon as you get rid of the treat, they are hearing the word, but you might see some wheels turning. So here's how we're gonna help Kuba learn to do the sit without the lure. For starters, if your dog is already in a sit, I recommend just doing this where you're gonna feed the dog. Maybe they're gonna stand up organically, or you could also toss the treat off to the side, or you could move your body, whatever works to get your dog up and moving if they're already in that sit position. And all you're going to do is wait for your dog to offer the sit organically. Now, please note, depending on your dog's breed, depending on how reliant they are on that verbal cue to sit, you could be waiting a little while. Okay, and so what I recommend you do is set this up in a scenario where it would intuitively make sense for you and your dog to sit anyway. So for example, we have Kuba and mom practicing in the living room on the floor. It makes sense that Kuba would want to offer a sit on the carpet in the living room. What we notice about mom is that she kind of keeps looking at Kuba, and what's going to end up happening incidentally is that Kuba thinks that mom wants to have staring contests. So they're gonna have this awkward like stare off right here. So what I ask mom to do is to turn her head away and instead use the back of her eyes, right? Or the back of her head with her eyes. So this may help if you set up a camera where you're looking forward and your dog doesn't know that you're watching, because what's gonna happen in a second is Kuba's gonna offer that sit on her own. Just a moment, we're going to see Kuba's ears. She's thinking, there's lots of consideration going on, and she's going to pop it down. So immediately mom's going to reach for that treat and offer it to her mouth. Now at this point you have two options. You can feed to mouth, where you just put it straight up to her nose and offer her that treat, or you can toss the treat off to the side and get your dog to stand up, or if you are already standing and mobile, then you can move too, and that'll probably prompt your dog to move. Now, you absolutely can give the verbal cue in this moment. You absolutely can be asking your dog to sit. There's nothing inherently wrong with that, but be careful of what your dog's definition of that sit cue is, because if you start saying sit and they think that there has to be a treat out in their nose in order to perform it, then you could actually just be frustrating them more. It's like almost like someone telling you the same thing and you're like, I don't know what you're saying, or I don't understand what you're saying, so we're just getting frustrated, right? So you really want to make sure that you're only giving the cue sit or whatever you've been saying previously, as long as your dog is not confusing the definition of sit and doesn't believe in their bones that there has to be a treat in their face in order to perform that sit. Now, the method that we're doing right here, where you're waiting for your dog to volunteer the sit and just sort of offer it, is known as capturing. And the reason I like this method is because it allows your dog to volunteer the behavior without the treats anywhere in the vicinity, or at the very least not certainly in their face and in their nose. It's allowing your dog to find patterns. Hey, every single time I put my butt to the ground, this person ends up giving me a treat. And they're recognizing the pattern of the behavior before they're recognizing, you know, hey, there's food, and becoming obsessed about it. Now, I did do a full length tutorial, really detailed tutorial on how to teach sit. That is a nitty-gritty tutorial. We go over common mistakes that guardians make when they're teaching sit. So if you're looking for like a more nitty-gritty detailed tutorial, that will be linked in the description box. I just more wanted to teach you in this video how to get rid of the treats from a sit if your dog already knows sit. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit like, consider subscribing, and I'll see you guys in the next video.